a man one time in the class that I used to teach about men and violence and men and their connection with their emotions, brought his 12-year-old boy into the group one night. And it was a spring night, warm, and the boy came in and he had shorts on. And he was bleeding from his knee. His right knee had a lot of blood coming out of it, and there were actually little pebbles stuck in it. And it had dried, so it wasn't actively bleeding. And as he sat there, we all looked at it, you know, probably 15 grown men in the room. And one of the men said to him, "Wow, that must have hurt." And the kid looked down and said, "What?" He said, "Well, your knee." He said, "Man, you got blood in your knee, and it's got rocks in it, and that didn't hurt?" And the kid said, "No, that didn't hurt." And his father said he didn't even want to go home and wash it out. He just wanted to come, and he said he'd deal with it tonight when we get home after the class and after the group and all that kind of stuff. And one of the big, strong, tough guys in the class said, "You can't tell me that didn't hurt. Because if I cut myself, or if I do something physical like that, that hurts." And one of the other men said, "Did you cry?" And the kid said, "What?" And he got this look on his face of just like disbelief. And he said, "No way. I would never cry about something like that." He said, "You just take it." And then somebody asked him, if a girl did that on the playground at lunchtime, like you did it, and she scraped up her knee and had rocks stuck in it, could she cry? And he said, "Oh yeah, she would go to the nurse. She may even go home." And he said, but not you." He goes, "No." He says, "I'm not a girl. I'm a boy. Boys don't cry." And the whole room kind of just stopped and said, "Wow, we've all gone through this process. We've all learned not to cry." And I think one of the men actually started crying, because as he looked back on his life, he realized that by not crying, he had learned to be violent. He had learned to be controlling and coercive and abusive, because he couldn't cry. He couldn't feel pain. And then, of course, we had a really deep conversation about how do you get to this place? What is it really like? And it was so amazing to hear, because if you say something like, "My father used to say to me, 'You better stop that crying or I'll give you something to cry about,' and you ask a room full of men, how many of you heard that? Every hand goes up. And so there's a realization that happens that the process that has been done to men, the maturity process, requires no tears. And so what Lee and I are creating is a place of healing, where men and boys can come in and have a different relationship with their tears, where men can tell a story about how they've learned to be men and how they've learned to not feel and not cry. And a place where boys can see men being honest and open and willing to, if it comes up, shed a tear. And with this process, the hope is that there becomes a different relationship between men and boys, between men and their tears, and between boys and their tears. And that, of course, could lead to a different relationship between men and women, between men in the world, between country to country. It could be the beginning of ending violence.